right. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. As Nick mentioned, my name is Ray. I'm product manager here at Kaleido. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about supercharging Web3 game development with the Kaleido NFT platform. So to get started, I just want to kind of level set on the gaming landscape today. So I think there's really two main buckets of games. We have the Web2 games and the Web3 games. Web2 games, they're more focused on playability and storylines. These are, some of the most popular games, AAA games, League of Legends, Diablo 4, which, just released last week, Minecraft, Apex Legend, FIFA, etc. So this is really, games that you think of today. A lot of these games have in-game assets or even economies, but what we find is that the virtual goods are only really valuable inside the individual games. So they're mostly siloed ecosystems. Web3 games, on the other hand, they have a monetary aspect to them. A lot of these games have a play-to-earn mechanism. In-game assets are tokenized. They're tradable as NFTs. And what that means is the virtual goods inside the game are also valuable outside of the game. So because of that, many Web3 games might have more of an open ecosystem. So the next phase of Web3 gaming, or how we think of what's next here at Kaleido, is something that's the best of both worlds. So a mixture of Web2 games and Web3 games. So, having some things on chain while some things are still off chain, making sure that that's a decision that's really optimized. Bringing, Web3 constructs to Web2 games in order to enhance them and make them a better experience. And we think that's going to just bring about new gaming experiences and business models. So some implications of what's next. There's a few, we think, really high-level trends that we see happening in the industry. So the very first one is asset ownership. So for the first time, players in Web3, they're able to own their in-game assets. They can choose what to do with them, whether that's to sell them, to trade them, use them, or even keep them outside the confines of the original game. So an analogy that I like to use is for Web2 gaming. Imagine you bought a car, let's say a really nice car, like a Ferrari from the dealership. You're all excited to drive it. And then you're driving around in your city, but then you realize as soon as you leave your city, you're not allowed to drive anymore. And that's kind of how Web2 gaming is, where again, what you own is only valuable inside of that original ecosystem. The second implication of what's next is gaming interoperability. So interoperability that can enable asset transfers between games, foster developer collaboration. It can even boost asset value across multiple games as well. So a couple of examples that I would like to give for game interoperability. Imagine you have two games, let's say game A and game B. In game A, you might acquire some sort of in-game gold or some sort of currency that's only in game A. And then for game B, you might have to own the game A currency in order to craft certain items or unlock certain experiences. And very quickly, you can see with this sort of model that fosters synergies between different games. Game interoperability can also allow in-game items to take on different forms as part of its life cycle. So let's imagine, again, three games. Game A, which is an RPG. Game A, let's say that's a card game. And then game C, it's more of a building game where you have to build different real estate or structures. So in game A, let's say you have an NFT of a sword. That sword is a weapon that you can use in the RPG game. For game B, upon proving ownership of the sword NFT, you may get access to a sword card in the game. And then for game C, again, proving that you have ownership of this NFT, that sword might become the name of a building or something. So you have a building called the Sword in game C. So as you can see, that same NFT or that same item can take on various forms across different games. And then the third experience, or the third implication, which we think is the most exciting, is really just the new experiences. So again, there's going to be new gaming experiences and business models that are going to emerge that we might not even be thinking about yet, or it's something that a lot of you on the call might be thinking about already. So I wanted to dive into some top pain points. So at Kaleido, we've talked to various gaming companies in the industry, and these are really 6 of the top pain points that we've seen. So the very first one is gas fees. So gas fees, they're often high and unpredictable, so that leads to a poor experience for both users and developers. Second is throughput rate. So throughput is often not reliable or high enough to handle the volume of transactions that are needed. Synchronizing on and off-chain data. So synchronizing your game's Web2 or private databases with blockchain isn't a easy task. So a lot of the times we find things that are happening on chain aren't instantaneously synced to what's happening in the game. Fourth are roadmap delays. So development is often lagging behind a roadmap. And we've talked to various developers who in their Web3 journey have found all sorts of issues or things that they just didn't think about. Fifth is wallet and user identities. So Web3 constructs make user onboarding challenging. So there's extra processes and things that a user needs to do in order to start playing a game. Very often games require users to have their own wallets in order to log in. So that's an extra setup process and something that non-Web3 natives might have trouble or friction doing. And then the last pain point is the 10 vendor problem. So talking to many companies, they found that if multiple vendors are needed to build out the Web3 portion of their game. So they might need a vendor for custody, vendor for wallets, vendor for infrastructure, etc. So I want to take a pause real quick and just do a poll and see, are these pain points something you've encountered in your Web3 development experience? And if any of these aren't a pain point that you've encountered, feel free to let us know in the chat, like what else you faced during your Web3 development. And cool. So we got some good responses so far. Looks like.
Yeah, and we'd love to know like what protocols and ecosystems you guys are using, right? Are you trying to do this gas-free private? Are you looking at sort of application chains, subnets, supernets? Are you doing this all on the mainnet? Share those thoughts with us, and I think there's a combination of when public first is correct, when private first is correct, and when something in the middle is correct, right? But it doesn't necessarily need to be a one size fits all, and that's one example of the value prop that you'll see today, is just the flexibility of the different ecosystems and different protocols for that matter that you can connect to. So again, just a shameless plug to share. The more you share, the more we can help. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I think we got some pretty good responses. It looks like wallets and user identities is the top pain point right now, and that is something we've been hearing a lot. Cool. Yeah. So I'll move on to the next slide. Go ahead and end the poll. Okay, so now I want to cover, why Kaleido. Sorry, the poll came back. Yeah, so now I want to cover why Kaleido. So with Kaleido, global brands choose Kaleido for Web3. These are just some of the various companies that we work with. As you can see, we work with companies in a variety of industries and locations around the world. That being said, we do work with customers of all sizes and stages of development. So it's not just those, Fortune 500 large enterprises that you saw on the previous slide. We also work with startups. We work with teams of varying levels of blockchain experience as well. So some of our clients are just starting out in Web3, might just have an idea, might not know too much about blockchain. And we work with those who have a mature Web3 project. They might even have, teams of blockchain experts focusing on their development. We're also unopinionated on where you are. So whether you are just starting your game, you might not have anything built out yet. You might already have a Web3 game built, but you're looking for a better solution. Or you might have a Web2 game and you're looking to integrate Web3. So I want to take a pause again here just to get a sense of where everyone is in their Web3 gaming journey. Yeah, and then I guess as part of the, at Kaleido, we're unopinionated on where you are. We really do offer, various sorts of engagement examples. Our platform is also fully pluggable. So if you already have a chain, as long as it's EVM compatible, works with Kaleido. If you don't, as Nick said, we do provide, various levels of blockchain infrastructure. So whether it's a private chain, a side chain, public ecosystem, etc.
Yeah, one additional point there too, Ray. We're very big fans of kind of the overall EVM ecosystem. We think that's, I think, just objectively kind of the richest, sort of collection of developers out there in the space doing really interesting things. But everything you're going to see in the demo today, it's built based off of our asset platform offering. It has an open source project called Hyperledger FireFly underneath it. And FireFly itself is a pluggable microservices middleware engine. One of the many pluggable components in it are blockchain connector interfaces. So over time, expect that community, that open source distro, and Kaleido by extension to be able to support, beyond just EVM compatible chains, right? Maybe some UTXO models, right? We do support Fabric already today. And so again, something of a shameless plug, but, I'd highly encourage folks, if you're not familiar with FireFly, just to take a peek at that community, part of the Hyperledger Foundation, which I'm sure most folks have heard of. It's incubated a lot of really important, blockchain protocols and other, identity projects. And it also has FireFly in there now. So I just want to let folks get an idea of, maybe where we are today, but also, where Kaleido is potentially going and where, the different open source communities can go as well. Back to you, Ray.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Nick. So segueing on to what Nick just said, want to do a high-level overview of Kaleido's product offerings. So there's three main layers to the Kaleido stack. So there's the Kaleido asset platform, the FireFly Supernode, and the chain. So starting at the bottom with the chain or the blockchain infrastructure, this is really Kaleido's bread and butter and where we got started back in 2017. So we offer chain infrastructure with some of the protocols that Nick just mentioned to stand up private chains, consortium chains, app chains, side chains, and we also have compatibility with public chains as well, any EVM compatible chain. And we also run RPC nodes for Ethereum, Polygon, and Avalanche. In the middle layer, that's the FireFly Supernode, and it's the asset middleware and infrastructure layer. So FireFly, it's built on, or it's an open source project that we contributed to the Hyperledger Foundation. And on Kaleido, we run a more enterprise grade version of FireFly. So FireFly, it's not a blockchain. Think of it as a data orchestration layer or the brain behind everything. So it does two of the most important layers of transport, which is getting data in and getting data out in a robust manner with the proper sequencing, retries, etc., to ensure the reliability and order of everything. It's also an event-driven model, so that allows connection between your Web2 databases, your game's private databases with Web3. As Nick mentioned, it's also fully pluggable. So there's various plug points for all systems, keys, databases, etc. It really is the easy button for Web3. And at the very top layer is the Kaleido Asset Platform. So what these are specific modules to facilitate the management of your asset portfolio. So I know on this call, we'll be more focused on the NFT platform, and the NFT platform provides various APIs. It has support for features such as lazy minting. It runs on top of FireFly, so that handles all your transactions to public and private networks. And there's also different parameters that you can tune for things such as confirmation times of your chain or gas management.
Yeah, and if we take our eyes back down to the bottom, I would venture to guess that most folks are kind of looking at that middle square that says app chain, right? Where the perfect world for you would be, I'd like a blockchain network that has a lot of the advantages of private and consortia chains, namely gas free, right? But I'd also like the ability to have flexibility around where I move those assets. And so one thing that we'll look at real quickly in the demo, but something that's really important kind of in this interconnectivity is a narrative where, hey, maybe we do our millions of transactions gas free on our app chain, on our side chain, but then let's delegate the ability to an end user to say, hey, I want to exit this asset into a public ecosystem, right? I want this sword that it took me 150 levels to earn right here. I want that to be available, on OpenSea, for example, right? Or on some other exchange. And so this notion of having a trusted bridge built in and also having, as many hooks into these different ecosystems as you need really opens up the art of the possible around where do you want assets to live, what circumstance dictate, when an asset gets minted versus when it gets bridged versus when it gets burnt, et cetera. So tons of flexibilities, and you're not pigeonholed into, one flavor of technology, one key provider, et cetera. So just kind of wanted to call that out. You're not choosing one of the above or one of the below down there. You can choose as many as you need, and then the asset platform and FireFly will help facilitate the deterministic and atomic movement of those assets. Back to you, Ray.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification, Nick, on that one. Okay. So next, I just want to show what it's like to develop with and without Kaleido. So on the left is without Kaleido. So you not only need to build your game, you also need to account for all the different things that you need to build in Web3. So whether that's tokens, NFTs, user management, user onboarding, events, etc. There's a lot that you have to think about before you can even, actually start developing your game. On the right, with Kaleido, so Kaleido provides, pretty much everything that you need for Web3 development with our open source powered, fully customizable platform. So we handle all of that, Web3 complexity, have APIs for everything so that you can just focus on building your game so that the game is, as good of an experience as you can make it for your players. Heading back to the pain point slide that I touched on earlier. So now that you know a little bit more about, what Kaleido does and how we can help you, I want to just talk about how Kaleido can help address each one of these key challenges. So the very first one with gas fees, as Nick mentioned, we can provide infrastructure to help you launch your own dedicated sidechain or app chain that's zero gas to manage those high volume transactions. We can also help connect to public ecosystems and give you access to our gas management capabilities and our auto fueling features. For throughput rate, maximize the throughput and eliminate disruptions, again, with the custom chains that we can stand up for you that are fully dedicated to your game. Also with FireFly and with Kaleido, we make sure that all transactions are reliably processed and transacted on the chain. Third, synchronizing on and off-chain data. So back to the challenge of making sure everything is synchronized between your game and what's happening on Web3. Kaleido fully manages all that complexity with FireFly and the event-driven model that we have, so that whatever is happening on-chain is reflected in your game and vice versa. Fourth is roadmap delays. So speed up development time with our pre-built services and our full stack of APIs. So everything that Nick's going to be demoing later, if in the Kaleido asset platform, is backed by an API. So what that means is you retain full control of the entire user experience of your game. We don't lock you into a black box or anything. So you still have all the customizability and whatnot that you need for your game.
Yeah, and just to extend on that, like I'm of the opinion that that's really critical, right? You guys, you have communities, you have, design artifacts, you have user experiences that people have already bought into. You do not want to remanufacture, repivot, re-architect the game, right? And that is not what Kaleido or the asset platform is asserting to do right here. It is a, HTTP invocable RESTful API surface for every single piece of functionality you need, including just exercising a smart contract, right? Which I think is critical. So you don't need to, do any complicated, ingestion of SDKs or, really complicated libraries. Take the same language that your server-side code is written in, probably JavaScript, and then just start exercising some of the underlying APIs, which I'll show you right there. We are of the opinion that UX, simplicity, and usability, of the system, whether it has a bunch of Web3 involved in it or just, small portions of it, we believe that's really critical. And so, if I can expand on that for just one more second, that's also why gas fees and wallets and user identities become really critical as well. Don't want to suffocate our end users. Even if we're talking to a public network, it would be way more elegant if we could abstract, transaction costs and fees to them, right? It would be way more elegant if, they don't even know that, they have a wallet and a private key, right? If they feel like they're just logged into your game and your ecosystem, but all of a sudden, assets and, different possibilities start arriving in their application and in their wallet. And we've done a ton of work to try to put easy buttons on top of a lot of these really hard things, but also without sacrificing, security or, durability, resilience, et cetera. So anyway, you come to Kaleido, you come to the asset platform, your UX does not change. It just gets enhanced with all the new underlying functionality. Keep going. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah. So continuing off that, so with the fifth pain point, the wallets and user identities. So this is really around the onboarding process. With Kaleido, you can eliminate a lot of that crypto complexity with wallets that automatically map to your existing OAuth systems or your existing game user management systems, so that when a user logs into your game, they're automatically assigned a key, so that they don't need to already have a wallet or anything that they bring to the game. For those who are more crypto natives or want to self-custody their assets, they can always transfer assets from the key that you've given them to their own wallet. On Kaleido, we also have support for various types of wallets as well. Even the more advanced wallets such as MPC wallets, Cloud HSM wallets. So those are all extra secure wallets that you can also offer to your users. And then lastly is the 10 vendor problem. So again, this is something that's come up with a lot of the companies that we've been talking to. And really, Kaleido is a one-stop shop for your Web3 game development needs. We do have a full stack of services that cover pretty much every aspect that you would be looking for. Next, we have Kaleido's gaming offerings. So these are 10 gaming offerings that Nick is going to cover in the demo. And I know it's 11:30 already, so I think maybe we can just jump into the demo so that we have enough time to cover everything. What do you think about that, Nick?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll be sure to touch on all of these. The templates and collections next to lazy minting, I think that's something that'll capture a lot of folks' attention. So really easy management around like the DNA and metadata of your in-game assets, but also the ability to like really do this at scale in a sort of off-chain manner first, and then delegate the ability to your end users to claim or ultimately mint the asset, and then bridging sort of logically follows that, right? Hey, I got this asset, I got it in this wallet, I would prefer for it to be in this wallet and be on this chain over here, right? That just turns into another experience that you can very, very elegantly layer into the game. So yeah, we'll hit on all of these. That was great, Ray. Thanks for the intro.
Yep.
Okay, my turn. Here, can you see this okay, Ray?
Yep, yeah, I can see it.
Okay, super. So we're gonna, what do we have here? 28 minutes. All right, I'll try to be as comprehensive as I can. So this is the asset platform that you're seeing here. This is kind of the top level of the stack. This is, where all of that functionality that Ray was just showing you on those screens. This is where this all lives right here. Very intuitive, very easy to exercise. So I'm just going to take you kind of on a logical journey through these 6 core modals or feature sets right here, and then we'll start doing stuff with it, right? We'll deploy smart contracts, we'll invoke it, we'll bridge an asset, we'll look at how you'd build an admin application, we'll look at an end user application. We'll try to do as much as we can as time allows. And I do also have 2 helper applications over here. Less oriented around gaming, but very, very much oriented on the correct way to use the asset platform, the correct way to, ingest events coming off of the blockchain, the correct way to, attach sensitive data or arbitrary data to an NFT. So this is kind of a nice utility suite of functionality to just, sort of marry with the asset platform. But we do have a few gaming specific assets as well. So let's jump into smart contracts right here. So this becomes the landing zone for all of your Web3 logic. I'd venture to guess that there's a lot of 721s that are out there, right? Maybe 1155s, and you probably have some in-game currencies, so ERC20 or another derivative of that. You can park as much business logic as you want inside of this landing zone right here. And these smart contracts can talk to as many networks as you have configured inside of your asset platform. So maybe we have a bunch of private Ethereum networks running Geth and proof of authority. Maybe we have a side chain, right, which is running Quorum or Besu behind the scenes with the validating nodes. And, it has a bunch of proxy nodes we can talk to. Maybe it's supernets, maybe it's subnets, maybe it's one of the public ecosystems. It does not matter, right? All of this source code can be pushed into any of those networks. And it's really easy to bring source code into the system, to bring business logic into the system. Kaleido in the asset platform will even hold your hand and will give you, built-in templates. I'm just going to call this token gaming, I think. Sorry, machine's running a little slow today. So we'll just say GME right here. If you're new to some of these token standards, Open Zeppelin is your best friend out there in the wild. It has a ton of really, really audited, battle-hardened, tested examples. So we're huge fans of that community. We pull from that source code base. But you'll see we'll auto-populate the code with all the dependencies. You can pipe that into Remix and try to extend it and add your own methods, add your own functions, etc. Right there. So you can use these as a great starting point. A lot of times, a pretty vanilla 721 is actually good enough, right? Like that's what's being used out there. Once you have your source code and kind of your DevOps pipe and change management system nice and baked, you can start bringing source code in different manners, right? Push it from your GitHub, run a VM and push it from your own sort of cloud automation jobs right there. Tons of ways to do it. So we'll click next. You can park the source in any sort of logic specifically named folder structure. So I'll just say gaming right here. We'll add that, and then we can go ahead and create this 721 compilation inside of a new folder called gaming that we have right here. So click inside of this, we'll see the life cycle of this, the compilation. Sorry, I got a moaning puppy in the background. But we'll see that, Kaleido and the asset platform compiled this source code for me, gave me the bytecode, gave me the ABI, and then gave me a bunch of stuff that I can do with it, right? I can generate open APIs. I can create indexers or listeners on functions. One of the many things I can do is just deploy the thing right here, right? We'll come back to namespaces and wallets here, but I just want to take us through, let's easily get a smart contract invocation or a deployment into the system. So we're going to send it from this company's wallet right here. It maps down into an HD wallet. Please stop, sweetie. And then we're going to go ahead and just deploy this source code. One lovely thing and one example of where FireFly becomes your best friend and where the asset platform is going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting on your behalf is we can see kind of, I use this analogy of saying, FireFly holds the hand of your transaction and it guides it through the busy streets. And, it does a lot of the complicated things inside of Ethereum and inside of Fabric, right? Where, dealing with nonce management or gas estimation, things like that can be really, really tricky and really gnarly sometimes, right? And so FireFly does that heavy lifting inside of a Go library called EVM Connect, or if we were using Fabric, called Fab Connect. And we can see all these little micro operations that it's doing, right? Assigning the nonce, doing gas estimation, submitting it, and then sort of, based on the network that we're working against, providing confirmation at the right block point. So we're on a private network here, just give me that confirmation, right? But if I'm on a public network, maybe I'd want to set a policy inside of the system's policy manager that says, wait for 10 blocks, right, before I count that as a confirmed transaction, or, wait for 20 blocks before I count that as a confirmed transaction. And this system is meant to be used at scale. That's another thing I want to emphasize for gaming. You guys aren't dealing with 10 assets, 20 assets, right? You have communities that have hundreds, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of gamers, right? And so you can do promotions, you can do airdrops, right? Where you need to be able to reliably get hundreds of thousands, millions of transactions into this system at scale, right? With like a, single batch process. That's what FireFly is designed to do. That's what this API surface is designed to do, to let you sort of deal with, as many surges and peaks in your workloads and as much volume as you need. Ray mentioned this. I'll just show it real quickly. Every single thing in the asset platform, inside of FireFly, inside of your blockchain as a service orchestration, everything has an API behind it. So, again, just to emphasize user experience, you'll come into this portion of the, of the console, and you'll use this for a few weeks. You'll get familiar with, how to structure your NFT collections and how to, create keys on demand, et cetera, how to create new blockchain connections. But, in month number 2, chances are you've written your own admin dashboard and you're just exercising this API surface where the top portion is for the asset platform. And then you get the entire FireFly API surface as well. So this is 800-900 APIs with the same authentication schema that can do every really important operation that you need on the blockchain, off the blockchain, resource configuration management. So having all of these in one spot is kind of a developer's best friend. And it also adds kind of like cleanliness and sanity to your application architecture. You're not pulling in 12 different SDKs, and you're not using different auth schemas, and you're not, talking to certain black box APIs, certain open APIs. This is right here in front of your face. Again, built on open source as well. This always logs me out, so I'll have to log back in. But built on open source, we have added some enterprise extensions like this smart contract management, like some stuff that we're going to show you with wallets. But the core engine of the blockchain protocols in FireFly is entirely OS. So just to tick off that business continuity box of, hey, we're going to use this vendor for this, but what happens in year 2 or year 3, right, when we want to run this infrastructure ourselves? You have that flexibility and you have that kind of seamless offboard ability, if that's even a word right there. So those are kind of a flyby tour of the smart contracts. I'm going to go back to one that already exists, a 721, and we're going to look at sort of an example of those open APIs. So we can click on the Actions tab here, and we see the things that have happened, right? It got deployed. We created an indexing service, and we created an API endpoint. So if we click on the endpoint right here, and we can go ahead and sort of see how Kaleido and the asset platform and FireFly, I'm clearly using those interchangeably, is turning Web3 into Web2, right? So this is another huge accelerator for developers and for application programmers. No longer the protocol-specific SDKs, and no longer, dealing with those nasty things that I just talked about, nonce management, RLP encoding, confirmation stuff, right? This turns into fire and forget exercises on what's very likely going to be, primarily this operation right here, right? Mint an NFT with a unique URI. So that's available. That's what I like to phrase as the easy door in that Ray alluded to as well. Similarly, you have event listeners on every state change, right? Every function that emits a signature. And you can say, hey, these are the state changes. These are the events that I care about. And it doesn't have to come from a token smart contract either. It can be other business logic, right? We're unclear on how much business logic for your game you're running on chain versus how much you're just doing in-game asset management, right? But for example, if you had another smart contract that was recording the usage of an NFT, right? Ray and I talked about this narrative where maybe I earn a sword inside the game, but I can only use that sword 10 times to, kill an enemy, right? Chop down a tree, whatever the operation is, right? Maybe we want to have another smart contract that's, recording usage of that, referencing the NFT ID, referencing my identity, right? And then, our gaming server can be listening to that smart contract. And then now we have sort of a dual record on the blockchain of ownership of the asset and sort of current state of the asset, dilution of the asset. That goes very nicely into fractionalization. Suffice it to say, anything that you care about happening on the blockchain, you can subscribe to. Kaleido will deliver it to you with a push notification via webhooks, or you can run your own WebSocket client and just sort of ingest the events, pull the events from the platform. So easy in, easy out. Can't really overemphasize the importance of that. That's very, very mature technology that's been in Kaleido and been in FireFly for, I'd say it's been in Kaleido for about 5 years and probably 2 to 2.5 years of extra battle hardening completely out there in the wild in the open source community. So pressing forward, and we will get to the applications, I promise. Want to talk through, some of the mechanics of like, how did you get into that namespace, Nick, right? How did you get into that area where you're creating APIs? You need two things. You need a hook into a blockchain, right? So the bottom of the pancake, the bottom of the stack that we looked at, and you need a hook into somewhere to store metadata to do public storage. So blockchains and IPFS. So you create those objects, you create those, configurations and connectors, and then you can create a namespace on top of it where you can start building your app, where you can start doing work and, sort of creating those event listeners and sending private data back and forth and exercising, the smart contract APIs. It's a trivial operation to, create new connectors or new blockchains inside of here. We won't spend much time in through the mechanics of this, but, if you have any resources in Kaleido, they'll get auto detected and indexed for you right here. So yeah, literally just click one and choose it, and then you specify a node, you're off to the races. If you wanted to talk to, public Ethereum or Polygon or Avalanche, et cetera, you can just sort of specify these handful of parameters: name, RPC URL, chain ID is critical. And if it's an enterprise RPC client and it's gated, provide that API key, provide that basic auth right there. As Ray mentioned, we are running a bunch of public infrastructure as well. So if you do want to talk about subnets or supernets or, public Ethereum node, Avalanche node, Polygon node, et cetera, give us a poke. We'll tell you how to get in touch with us at the end of this. And we're happy to talk about, that in more detail. And you can have as many of these connectors as you want, right? Have one, have two, have a dozen of them, right? And that sort of helps facilitate the cross-pollination and the movement of assets from, chain A to chain B based on different circumstances. Okay, so those are the connectors, very straightforward. Again, API underneath it. So if you want to delete one, recreate one, reconfigure one, no problem. All right, wallets. This was the grand champion of the poll, I believe, of where people are struggling. Makes perfect sense, right? I think you've started to get the idea of, sort of the server side programming of, how unfriendly it is bolting in some of these, ever changing SDKs to speak to the protocol. So FireFly and the asset platform has solved that, right, with the middleware and the open API generation. But we still need to sign transactions, right? We need to create that right mix of, custodied server side accounts versus externally owned accounts. What we believe the pattern to be kind of like the most acceleration in the gaming space is to abstract that key material away from your users. Chances are 98 to 99% of them, right, couldn't give a whatever about, private keys, right? They just want that asset. They want your gaming experience. Start bringing MetaMask and all these different wallets and plugins, Alpha Wallet into the experience, not to denigrate those by any stretch, but it sort of detracts from like, your game at large, right? And so this HD wallet is a really, really powerful technique right here, where it has to be lowercase, of course, where you can have a custodied server-side key tree managed on the asset platform, managed on Kaleido on behalf of your end users, but still give them the flexibility to kind of exit this wallet, right? So this is, maybe we just want to make a key for user ABC right here. Two things worth noting. The first is this URI. So sort of like how your application could call an identity in a smart contract. So I want to sign with this key right here. Instead of passing this hexadecimal address, I can pass user ABC, right, with this syntax, with this callable URI right here. And so the pattern that we would tend to see is that you have your existing OIDC, OAuth systems, right, where people have a UUID, they have a username, an email address. You have flexibility over the syntax that you want to use right here. Use some deterministic identifier that you have parked in your database when Nick Gaski logs in, and then just call the key on my behalf right there. Really straightforward. Similarly, you can do a lookup. Nick Gaski logged in. It was his first time. He doesn't have a key. Now you come back to the API surface and you just create a key on my behalf right there, right? You call a put method against that, against the wallets route or the keys route right here. Yeah, you'd call this API right here and just put a new key in the wallet on my behalf and provide the UUID or the corresponding syntax that you want to decide. So straightforward. And again, now your UX, what they're seeing on the glass is there's no private keys suffocating them. There's no custom plugin that they had to download. They're just logged into your game and all of a sudden they have some digital assets that are available to be claimed, right? There's 2.2 billion keys inside of every one of these runtimes. And you can have as many HD wallets as you want, right? Maybe your portfolio has different games inside of it, right? Maybe your game is so sophisticated that you have, different levels that take months to complete, right? I don't know all the scenarios, but if you do want to separate wallets for different tranches of users, different gaming experiences, or different games at large, that's perfectly fine. Delete the keys if you need to offboard a user, add new keys if you need to onboard users, and have as many wallets as you want. Now, the other thing is not all assets are the same, right? I may have had to spend a year playing the game to like actually earn that asset. And, I don't want that asset in a custodied wallet. I want it in the, most secure, most expensive, all bells and whistles wallet. And so you can create an experience as well where not only can a user, transfer something to a MetaMask or an Alpha wallet or just some arbitrary address, but you can also create an experience for them where say, hey, would you like multi-party compute for this type of asset right here? Or would you like your key to be backed in a HSM, for example, right? And that can turn into different charging models. That can be like a reward inside of the game of like, very few people are going to earn this NFT, but when they do, you get to have it backed in a multi-party compute wallet. A lot of flexibility there, right? I don't know what the correct balance is, but it's not a one wallet fits a chain. It's not a one key fits an identity. It's as many or as few as you want. And again, I'll say it again, API underneath it, so you can create these on demand, right? You have that one user out of the blue that finally earns that NFT, and you say, oh my goodness, I need to create that HSM service now because they finally got it, right? No problem, exercise the API, boom, you're off to the races there. We'll take a look at these wallets like in the context of an application as well, because there's another sort of turn of the wheel to like fully close that loop right there. Okay, 10 minutes left. Two core things, or two additional core things I do want to show. Let's go into the NFTs world right here. So this is think of it as kind of like a management utility for, I believe I said the DNA or the metadata for your NFTs. And there's two sort of core objects inside of here, templates and collections. Templates, this is a JSON or YAML definition of the metadata that you want in the NFT. So the different attributes and characteristics. And you can also determine, like, you know, where's the source material coming from, right? Do I need to exercise an external API call to pull down some source material? Am I just feeding it in, you know, different images or video assets from my existing VMs and my existing database? Is it just a static image, right? That never changes, right? The level 1 token is going to be a gold star every single time. This is the DNA of it. Once you've created the DNA, take a look at this robots one for if anyone really actually wants to kind of see it right here. So we can see the attributes, and we can see sort of like a high level definition of the components right there. If we go into our off-chain bucket right here, wherever, I have to go into a namespace. If we go into an off-chain bucket, like we'll actually be able to see the full YAML that was uploaded as well. But the docs for this have a ton of examples, and suffice it to say, you're just reading in some attributes and you're reading in some data. We will continue to enhance these. I always click the wrong one there. These template examples and stuff to be, you know, sort of more industry specific. I think our opinion is that in the gaming ecosystem, we are not the experts whatsoever, right? You guys are the designers. You guys are creating the gaming experience and the user experience. You know your characters, you know your levels, you know your accomplishments. This is not for Kaleido to say, hey, here's a good gaming template, right? You feed in your 3D assets, you feed in your video files. And I'll mention the API again, just because like it's worth emphasizing. Your games are not static, right? I know your games get releases, you know, every 5 days, every week, every month, right? And you get new design artifacts, you get new assets, right? You don't want to come in here and manually create a new template every time that you've updated, you know, a new design asset. Instead, what you would do is you'd exercise the API surface again, so that, you know, as soon as a new design artifact comes into your backend, right, you have your own triggers and your own notifications, right, your own sort of, you know, Lambda functions, et cetera, where you can ingest that notification, and then you subsequently just call this API right here to, you know, update or create a new template, or delete an old template and create a new one, for example, right? And so all that gets automated hand in hand, one-to-one with kind of the evolution and, you know, changing and, you know, versioning of your game. Really, really important, really powerful right there. And then once you've defined the DNA, right, the metadata, the attributes, you can create collections on top of it. And inside of collections, this is where you actually start minting assets or allocating assets. And that's the last thing I want to show, right? It's expensive to go blockchain first on everything, right? Blockchain, by nature of computer science and the laws of physics, has limitations on how much data can go into a block, how chatty can the consensus algorithm be, right? It's, you know, it can get quite a bit of data in, but, you know, there are limitations at scale. So a common technique that we've seen, Ray referred to it as lazy minting, is dealing with the orchestration of as much stuff as we can off of the blockchain, right? It's way more efficient to do stuff kind of on classic Web2 rails, the way modern systems have already been built, than to do everything blockchain first. And so we can look at an example here where we have a robots collection right here of some cute little robots, right? So I want to create a new NFT. It's going to say, hey, what template do you want to use right here? Like to use the robots template, right? What name do you want to provide to it? When I call it robot 7. And now this becomes the developer's best friend, this field right here. So as I'm quote unquote minting an NFT, what I'm really doing is I'm structuring the object and I'm pushing it into one of your users' application experience. So it's ostensibly in their wallet, right? It's inside of their wallet experience, but it's not married to that identity yet. So you allocate it to an end user, user one, for example, right here, and then they can go into your game and they can say claim, or they can say discard, right? If it was maybe it was a free NFT that you guys just did an airdrop for and they don't actually want it, right? They can discard it, they can mint it. And once they mint it, they can mint it to, you know, the wallet that's custodied, or they could mint it to another wallet, or they could mint it to the wallet that's custodied and then transfer it to another wallet, right? So just examples of the art of the possible. I'm going to speed up here and I won't be able to get too creative. We'll say metal rarity is 1, class is 2, and requirement is 3. And then I just need to add an image for it. So this is sort of the off-chain portion of the Kaleido storage. So again, you can have millions of files right here, right? You have your own dedicated database that's part of this stack right here. So we can generate the NFT. We should see a cute little robot come out. And again, I'm not doing anything on the blockchain right now. I'm creating this asset and I'm pushing it into this, you know, end users, you know, wallet application, right? And so now if I switch to an example of what a, you know, gaming wallet or log into a gaming system would look like, I think I need to have another browser open to do this. So can go in here, can do a refresh. So it'll probably log me out. And we should be able to see the presence. I think that's the right password. We should be able to see the presence of that new asset that I just created, Robot 7, inside of the wallet. And so this is kind of the path, and this, you know, creates a much better experience for the users as well, right? They, you know, they've earned something, right? And they can choose to, you know, grab it or leave it in there for as long as they want. And this also alleviates your blockchain as well, right? So it's not, I do an airdrop and we got to, you know, get 5 million transactions in the next hour, right? It's like, hey, just grab this thing when you want it. FireFly and the system will take care of kind of like drip feeding those transactions in, getting the events back out the other side. So I know this is not the UX, you know, any of the folks on the call would create. It's meant to be purposely kind of, you know, very, very lightweight and very generic. The goal of these applications is showing you how to exercise the APIs and the power of the surface. One other thing I'll note is we, you know, have very, very much been like an enterprise first organization. So, you know, a lot of our customers are highly regulated industries that, you know, have a huge DevOps and sysadmin team. And, you know, they need unequivocal line of sight on the health and metrics and monitoring of their network. So this entire stack, right, all of the functionality that you saw is underpinned by, you know, individual microservices and runtimes. And you have the ability to, you know, sort of structure your own monitoring and alerting on all of these services. So, you know, if we are starting to talk about, you know, 500,000 millions of gamers in the ecosystem, this truly is a platform and it truly is infrastructure that is, you know, of that caliber and meant to support that scale. I won't click through all these dashboards, but, you know, you can see the health of runtimes, you can see blockchain specific information, et cetera, et cetera. 2 minutes left. Wondering if there's anything I forgot to show. Activity right here. We can, there's a ton of stuff available inside the FireFly namespace, right? And so we can see, you know, a life cycle of everything that we've done on chain, off chain. We can see the life cycle of, you know, blockchain specific transactions or on chain actions first. We can, again, slow machine today for some reason. We can see, you know, any events or any listeners that we're subscribed to. If we're dealing with, you know, a specific smart contract or a specific token, we can dive, you know, into the token pool and see all of those index transactions, et cetera. So this is a really, really rich interface, really rich surface, ton of flexibility, ton of configuration, but also critical easy buttons around, you know, talking to a smart contract, ingesting events, creating new, you know, NFT templates, and, you know, sort of doing that lazy minting ceremony and creating collections. So I hope that gives you guys like an idea around the art of the possible. I'm going to stop sharing. And Ray, I don't know if you have our contact information on any of the final slides, or if we should just park it in here. If you do have any questions, probably the quickest way to get a hold of someone on the team, oh, I sent that to the hosts and panelists. Let's try again. Probably the easiest way is just to contact sales@kaleido.io. That routes to, you know, some engineers and architects, but also the whole sales department. So regardless of what stage you're at in your journey, and regardless of whether the feature you needed or you think you need was on the glass today, get in touch with us. We'd love to have a conversation, love to learn more about what's worked, what your pain points are, sort of where you see your game going. And we believe that we have a lot of tooling and a lot of infrastructure to help.